Hello and welcome to my channel today. Today I'm going to be creating a large tag using stamps and stencils from Be Crafty. This tag is a Dilutions large tag, I think it's a number 12, and I'm starting off by adding some Dilutions paints. I decided to use my little mini brayer, and I first of all applied Peony Blush, and this one is Vibrant Turquoise. I decided I wanted to do something a bit different to normal, so I'm adding some scratchy marks into the paint using, this is actually a kebab stick. But it's something I don't normally do. I thought it'd be a bit different. And now I'm adding some more detail using the Mandala 6 stencil with some of the lemon coloured Dilutions paint and a stencil brush. Once I'd left this to dry, I used a stamp set I've only bought recently from Be Crafty, and it's large numbers. The numbers also come with the ordinal letters, so st and nd for birthdays, so they'd be ideal for creating ages on cards. But I thought the size of them and the style of them were ideal for mixed media type projects. So I'm using archival black ink because I'm going over an acrylic paint background. Now I kept my numbers over to the right hand side of my tag because I already had in my head that I wanted to create some collage elements over onto the left hand side, so I'm sort of leaving a bit of space for that to be able to go onto there without too much of the ink in the background. I didn't mind a little bit of it, but not loads and loads. Now, although I really loved the black numbers, I wanted them to look a little bit different, so I'm adding some white of it's a Signo Uniball pen, and it's a broad one, and this is the white pen that I have found to work the best for me. I know that lots of people like lots of different white pens, but this is the one that I found always works for me. And I am quite impatient, and I know you should always let things dry thoroughly before you use your pens over the top, but I'm afraid I have destroyed so many pens by not being patient. So I'm going around sort of parts of the numbers, and I was trying to sort of think about where the light cape would come in and where the highlight should be, but to be totally honest, I don't worry too much about that. It's a little bit of interest against the black. So now I'm going to add some collage. This is something I don't do very often, but I really want to get into it. This tissue paper is just cheap, normal white tissue paper. I bought a whole stack of it for not very much money. And I'm using the, I can't remember the name of the stamp exactly, but I'll link all of these into the description box afterwards. It's one of the collage stamps, and it could be called Light Up or something along those lines. I'll link it in so you'll know. And I'm using black archival ink because it needs to be a permanent ink when you're doing this technique, because when you put the glue the paper onto the tag, it needs to not run. And what I'm doing here is, to not get a harsh line around my tissue paper, I'm using my water brush to act as sort of like a knife, and it works really easily with this. You just add a little bit of the water and then just pull gently and it pulls the edges away. So I decided where I wanted it, and then I decided to remove this part, which I will actually use a bit later. And I'm using Deco Art's matte medium for this. I think people do use things like soft gloss gel. I think it's, you know, whatever suits you. I know there are specialist decoupage glues as well, but I find the matte medium works perfectly fine. And the secret with this, especially with this cheap tissue, is to be very gentle. And you'll see there that I wasn't that gentle, and I did actually remove a little part of the design. It doesn't worry me too much. It's going to be the background of my tag, so I'm not too worried if it's little bits are missing. So because I had torn that bit off, I thought, I know, I'll just add that other little bit of tissue that I removed earlier and just create another overlay element. So you can still see part of the original collage below, but it just adds an extra element, and as it's a background, it just all adds to the texture and interest. To help some of the elements stand out a bit better and to also blend that tissue into the background a bit more, I'm using my Dina Wakley scribble sticks. I scribble a little bit on and then add water to blend them out. Now these look like they are a crayon. They are not a crayon, they're actually a watercolour pigment in a stick, so they act as a watercolour, not a waxy or oily crayon. So once I was happy with what I've done in the background, I wanted to draw the edges of the tag in so that it actually looked like a frame to the images in the middle. So I've just used my archival ink to draw those edges in. And now I wanted something that would tie all the elements together so they didn't look like separate parts of one whole. And I find a really good way of doing this is to add some stenciling. So I'm adding some white stenciling because it's a good contrast against the colour, and I just wanted something that had quite a fine detail, so I'm using the regular dot stinkable, and I'm just doing it sort of where parts join. Now I wanted my focal point, and I've decided to use the largest bee from the Bee Monarchy set, and again I'm using archival ink because I'm going to do a little bit of watercolouring with the scribble sticks again. So stamping it out, I also stamped out some elements from the Dragonfly collage sheet and the stitched borders. Again, I will link all of these products down in the description box. I picked the colours that were already in the tag, so the pink, the blue and the yellow, and I coloured my other elements and then my bee using the Dina Wakefield scribble sticks. This time I'm using the water brush directly to the stick, which you can do. It gives a nice watercolour effect, and if you're out and about, it's a really tidy way of being able to do some watercolouring, so you don't need to make a lot of mess with it. Now this was the part that took me probably the longest in the entire project, and it was deciding where all these pieces would go. I cut them all out with the idea that I may or may not use them. In the end I used them all, but what you'll see here is actually my process as it happens. I hadn't decided where these were going to go beforehand, apart from I did know that I wanted most of the focal image to be over on the left hand side. So I'm just applying them where I think they look nice, chopping down the tape measures as need be, and just having a nice time. Now when I came to place the bee, I decided that it needed something underneath it to add a bit more texture, also to raise it up above the background to really create a focal point. So I'm using this piece of, it's called cambric, it's a bit like gauze, but it's a lot more stable, it keeps its shape a lot better, and you can pull out the edges to get a really nice frayed edge. Sticking it down with Pinflair glue gel, because that's really nice solid glue, and to add another different texture underneath again. This is something I've seen other crafters do and I really like it, is to add just a little bit of thread. It just adds just something a little bit extra. And finally for my tag, I need to add some words. These are from the Small Words set. It's quite a large tag, so I didn't want to cut just one sentiment and cut the words up, because I felt that they would just get totally lost against the background. So I chose 3 separate sentiments that I felt all went together and went with the theme of the tag as well. I wasn't happy with how that stamped the first time, so I just stamped it out again just to get it a little bit darker. And rather than cut on my paper trimmer, I decided to cut them out by hand. This does give you a sort of a more wonky look, so to speak, but I think that looks quite nice, especially on mixed media or art journaling type projects. And then just to help lift them above the background, I'm adding a little bit of ink around the edges again, just to frame those words. So if you have enjoyed this video, do please like by giving it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, if you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. And I'll see you next time. Bye.